Washington football. Woo!
From Canada.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle, and I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Michael Hall and Michael Reed. The Burgundy Zone is a part of the Frederick Podcast Network. You can find out more by going to www.listenfrederick.com. We are rejoined by friend of the podcast, funny man himself, Mr. Michael Phillips of the Richmond Times-Dispatch. Thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful, beautiful Monday evening. Michael, how are you doing?
It's draft week, man. Let's get excited.
You're absolutely right. It's draft week. That's the title of this episode. How did you know, Michael? I guess you're a genie or something. I don't know. I don't get it. And speaking of being a genie or being a predictor of sorts, what's going on with this ownership news? Do you think that we should be getting more news this week on what's going to go on? Because, you got Brian Davis coming over and saying he's getting finances from the aliens. We got to be able to make some sense out of this, Michael. Do you think we're going to get some news here?
I don't think there's news to be had. I think okay. I would call it like this. I would say that the Harris Group has bought the house. They just haven't closed on it and got the keys. Okay. Is there a chance things go sideways? Sure. And the bank always wants to leave the door open to somebody with more money. There's not anybody out there with more money. There's one person out there who can legitimately beat this bid. His name's Jeff Bezos. He's not going to do it. None of these other people are serious or are being taken seriously by the NFL. There is one serious group. They have made their final offer, and the Snyders have accepted that offer. We're just marching towards the conclusion here, but because it is Dan Snyder, it will have to take much longer than it should otherwise. I think the latest update here is I think this May owners meeting at Target is probably slipping away, if it hasn't slipped away already. I think we're probably looking at this thing happening over the summer. I do continue to believe, though, Josh Harris is going to own this team before week 1 of the preseason. There's not going to be another game at FedEx Field before ownership changes over. I don't think there's a lot to sweat there beyond everything that's going on. But I'll just take this further. This is an opportunity for these people to be on TV. I mean, I saw, this morning, Monday morning, Steve Apostolopoulos, he's on CNBC. I don't know, would they have had him on to talk about housing securities if he wasn't in the running for the Commanders? It's a chance for him to get out there, get his name out there. I don't begrudge those people that, but I do not take them seriously.
What do you mean? What do you mean Brian Davis's money isn't being taken seriously, Michael? I mean, it's all coming from white people.
Yeah, he does.
That may be a line that sticks with us for a long, long time.
I already got that tattooed on my chest. That's such a good line. And then Steve Apostolopoulos was kept saying the word process because he's so Canadian. He was like, "It's all part of the process."
But then he said it differently at the end of the interview.
Yeah, then he said it was
right. An inconsistent processor.
Yeah, we were like, I was like, what is going on here?
His sugar's running low off maple syrup. Yeah.
Okay, Kyle, come on, that's a stereotype.
I'm sorry.
But when it comes to the stadium, I know we always hear about Josh Harris bringing on Mitchell Rales. I know Harris was actually from this area. I didn't know that originally. He grew up around here. What do you think that is DC, the old RFK site, an actual possibility, or are they looking somewhere else?
Very much so. Your only problem there is the timing. I mean, it's still going to be pulling teeth to get that site and to get it the way you want it. So you don't just want the land, you want the land to be able to develop. You want the free and clear lease, all those things. That's not going to happen instantly, even for these guys. There's going to be a lot of momentum, but you got a lot of hurdles to clear. You got to go through Congress. You got to go through the National Park Service, Department of the Interior, DC City Council, blah, blah, blah. These are not famously productive groups. So you're potentially looking at, like 27 has sailed. The new stadium not going to open in 27, but they've got to sit down and take a look at, do we want to open at RFK? And they got better legal advice than I'm just spouting off here on a podcast, but do you want to open at RFK in 2030? Or do you want to open in Virginia or Maryland, in National Harbor, Woodbridge, or at the quarry in Loudoun in 28? That doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a lot. That's got a big loan, $1 billion loan, paying it, 7% interest. That racks up quickly. This is the number one way they're going to make their money back. So I think it's a matter of how much patience they have, how much they're willing to go through that process. And I can't answer that question for them other than to say, I hope they do. I hope they get this right. But it's going to be a financial squeeze. There's 17 partners. There's $1 billion loan coming. There's a lot of moving factors. They are going to want to start making money quickly. And that is going to be the number one way to make money quickly off of this team.
Yeah, definitely. And you kind of answered it a little bit, but my question was going to be to kind of piggyback off that. Say RFK like gets held up, or they just flat out just say we can't do it. Is there another spot that would be like choice number 2 for them yet, or does anybody not know that yet?
Well, if you want to read the tea leaves, I think my stance had always been Virginia was ahead of Maryland for many years. The Virginia offer is better than the Maryland offer. Yeah, boo away. It's just been a better offer. Now, you want to read these tea leaves, though. Rails and Harris both are from the Maryland side. Does that mean anything? I don't know. It might. They've connections there, obviously. They've got loyalties there. The Maryland site has always been National Harbor, will always continue to be National Harbor. I'd be stunned if any. I just don't think they're going to build in Landover. I don't think they're going to double down on that Landover site. I think National Harbor is a great site. Woodbridge is obviously still on the board. And my favorite Virginia site is the Corey site, which is in Loudoun County near Dulles off of the Silver Line. You can boo away. It's still on the Metro line. It's still part of the region. I think it makes a ton of sense. Virginia's growing that direction. But I think those are the 3 you're looking at in the non-RFK. I would throw one more out there though, and that is the land across from Nats Park, Anacostia Park, on the other side of Nats Park. Your downside there is you can't do anything big, but there is enough room for a football stadium there. You got a little stadium district. Obviously, a lot of cities do that. You'd have to build your facility elsewhere, whether that's Landover, Ashburn, whatever you wanted to do. But I think that could very much be in play as well.
Yeah.
What about Dundalk?
Yeah, with Dundalk. Jeez, man. Now let's move before anybody else falls asleep watching this, Michael. Let's talk about the football team. Obviously, the draft is coming on Thursday. It's the big news of the week, Michael. What, in your opinion, because 2 years ago, linebacker was heavily scouted by this staff. They went and got Jamin Davis. Last season, they scouted wide receiver more than any other position. They went wide receiver first round. In your opinion, what do you think that it's going to go down in that first round? Are there a couple of positions you think are a slam dunk that you think that they're going to go with?
My chips are on offensive line. I think they're going to take an offensive lineman. Now, you say you never know how the board's going to shake out. You never know if you're going to be able to trade back. Everybody always loves a good trade back. If that opportunity is available, they'll look into it. If they turn in a card at 16, I'm pushing my chips in on offensive linemen. I get that there are good corners out there. I get that they need a corner. But dang, if they don't really need an offensive lineman, and I think a tackle in particular. Like I say this, Charles Leno, man, has done some very good things here. Walter Payton, Man of the Year. I have no interest in disparaging any of that. Obviously, a great guy, but can you really count on him giving you 17 more games at that left tackle position? And if you can't count on that left tackle position, how are we going to evaluate Sam Howell? How are we going to evaluate, your new coaching staff with Eric Bieniemy? You've got to get that position secured. That's what I've got circled. The pick I've been making is Darnell Wright of Tennessee. I think there's a lot of guys out there. I think Paris Johnson of Ohio State's probably off the board by the time they pick. I am not wild about Pierce Skoronsky, the Northwestern kid. It just feels like Brandon Sheriff Part 2, where he ends up at guard again and everybody pretends like that's not a big deal. I think they need a tackle. I think they're going to get a tackle.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's one of those things, too, where when you look at the board, first of all, they've scouted more offensive tackles than anybody this year. And you can get a starting caliber offensive lineman, an offensive tackle in round 1 and a starting caliber corner in round 2. I don't really know if that works vice versa. I don't know if you can get a starting caliber offensive lineman in round 2.
Well, you can get a starting offensive lineman, but not a tackle.
You can, but can you get a tackle? Right. Yeah. Thank you, Kyle. Thanks for that. Yeah, thank you. How much stock do you put into the tight end position? You see a lot of these mock drafts saying Dalton Kincaid, regardless of tight end early, even if it's not in round 1. Should we put any stock into that?
I put stock into these tight ends. I know I'm the only person who does that. I'm the lone voice in the wilderness. I think Logan Thomas takes a big step forward this year. I think he was really held back by the ACL last year. I think the young guys are good. I loved what I saw from Cole Turner. I don't know. I think they're good at tight end. Like
Right.
It's not like they couldn't improve there, and it would be nice to improve there. But dang, if they don't have like legitimate actual needs elsewhere. The one thing, like set the world on fire conversation I'm willing to have is if Bijan Robinson is the 16, do you discuss it? Do you think about it? I think there's an argument to be made that it's worth discussing, but I know that would set Twitter on fire. So I will refrain from saying that too loudly.
Yeah, that's a hot one on the Twitter streets nowadays. So the Chase Young 5th-year option discussion has been a huge topic, and I think May 2nd is the deadline. That's coming up pretty soon. And then they have Miles Murphy from Clemson in on one of the top 30 visits as well. So that got people talking. So 2-3 years down the road from now, one or two of the three people are here. Chase Young, Montez Sweat, or Cam Curl. Which one or two or any are here in 2 to 3 years down the road?
Cam Curl is the most likely to be here in 3 years because you get that done this offseason. He will never be cheaper than he is right now. Price of business only goes up from here. Get that. It's like the Terry McLaurin thing. What was it we kept saying last offseason? Every day you wait, Terry McLaurin gets more expensive, and you want him. You want him on your team. You want Cam Curl on your team. Every day you wait is a day you pay him more money to do what he's going to do anyway. Just get to the finish line. Just cut him the check, pay him, keep him around. I think that's the easy one.
I like
to
the
forecast.
Michael Phillips.
I would love to give you a prediction on Young and Sweat. I got nothing for you other than I think they're going to kick the can to next year on both of them. So I don't think anything's cut. I don't think either of them gets an extension this offseason. I'd be very curious. I don't know which way the 5th-year option breaks. I assume they're going to pick it up because they're going to wait until the deadline. I think you'd kind of quietly leak out there that you're not going to pick it up instead of making a big show of the selection if you weren't. But either way, franchise tags available next year. Franchise tags available for Montez next year. I think their performance on the field will probably go a long way towards determining that this year.
Yeah, and I've seen some theories, Michael, to piggyback off of that Montez Sweat or Chase Young could be traded in this draft, like they've hypothetically said the Seahawks, so to speak. Have you heard anything like that, and would you be surprised if that did happen?
I'd be really surprised if Chase Young is traded because I don't think his value is high enough right now. Like if you're going to trade Chase Young, what's the return going to be? And what he's shown and coming off of the injury, and you're still not sure he's fully back. Like you're not going to get 100 cents on the dollar for Chase Young in return. And I think it would be much smarter to let him play a year, build up the hype, do well, as opposed to trying to trade him now to cut rate costs, unless you really think he's never going to recover, he's never going to be the same. I haven't heard that from anybody. I don't believe that to be the case. If you thought that, then you could go down the trade Chase Young road. Montez Sweat, absolutely. I mean, look, there's nobody here, who's sacred in that sense at that position. I think Young, Sweat, Smith Williams, you make an offer for any of those guys, I think you got to listen to it at that point. I would be very surprised if it happened, but I don't think they're untouchable in that sense.
All right, and with that being said, Shaka Toney unfortunately got handed down disciplinary action from the league for his gambling, which is unfortunate for Shaka. Really was looking forward to him. But that being said, with that news, to wrap this up, Mike, we'll only have a couple more questions for you. How high is a priority for edge rusher for this team? Do you think like a day 2, day 3 pick?
Well, day 2 is interesting because you've got a really good second round pick. And I think you guys have identified if you go offensive line, you probably go corner, or defensive back, at least in the second round. That third round pick is at the end of the night. We're going to be staying up late on Friday, boys. So go ahead and get your coffee brewing now. They're going to be picking at the very end of the night on what's always a really long night where they do the second and the third rounds, that compensatory pick. You have to look at that like a day 3 selection. And a day 3 selection is who's out there, who do you like? Grab them, bring them in. So I wouldn't read into that pick being whatever position it is. I think at that point, you're just going to the board and grabbing guys, which is the same thing you do on day 3. Here's some guys that we like. Here we go. I think they'll take a quarterback at some point. I think Ron has communicated that to us. I wouldn't be surprised if they take an edge rusher to reload off the Shaka Toney absence. Probably going to take some more offensive linemen. But the further down you get, the less you read into the positions. Now, there's some guys who might slide to day 2 on the offensive line where maybe you double up at that position, and that would be really wild if they did that. I'm curious, Anton Harrison, Oklahoma, is a name I keep hearing having some first-round buzz behind him. Maybe they take him in the first round, whereas previously you were looking at him as maybe the guy you could get in the second round. But I'm very curious, if they would consider double playing that, or if there's just they need a defensive back, they need an offensive lineman. That's what they got circled for those first 2 picks.
I got another name for you to add on there is DeJuan Jones out of Ohio State. I know your colleague, John Keim, obviously knows all too well about DeJuan Jones being an Ohio State alum, but you look up DeJuan and you're going to really like what you see. I think he's a first-round talent. But to move on, you talked about corner, where we think that possibly that second rounders where you could really get a good one, or in the first round, obviously. But let's break down that corner position. Do you think it's more geared towards nickelback because McCain left in the offseason, or do you think it's getting a corner in that second round is more pivotal with getting an outside kind of guy?
Well, I also think that Del Rio is going to have a big say in this. That's why I keep saying they're not going to take Joey Porter. I just don't think he fits with what Jack Del Rio wants to do. Ron has traditionally given pretty wide latitude towards the assistants and what they like. Same way, I'm really excited to see what they take offensively, because I think Eric Bieniemy is going to have a big hand in it. I'll love to see what kinds of guys he drafts. He never got to do that in Kansas City. What kind of players is he going to take to set the tone with? We got a little bit more of a body of work here on Jack Del Rio as far as guys he likes, and obviously guys he likes collaboration with Ron. But I just think, NFC East, man. All these teams flying high, all these teams with their chips in the middle of the table, great passing attacks. Maybe not the Giants, but certainly Philly and Dallas. You better be loaded in that secondary if you're going to hang with those guys.
Last question I have for you, Michael, really quick. Linebacker, do you still think that is a big need, and do you think it will be addressed in the draft? And which day?
Man, I think they need a middle linebacker who can wear the dot and be dominant and call the plays and all that. You missed on Jamin Davis. You had your chance. Like that's what that is, and you don't get to come back to that well now again for a couple of years. I wouldn't be surprised if they take a linebacker, but I've been very surprised the past 2 off seasons they have not made a big free agency splash at that position. I've been very surprised by that so far.
I got you. Michael, I can't thank you enough for your time, as always, and all your work for the Richmond Times-Dispatch. I really do appreciate you, brother. I hope you have a good Monday evening, and enjoy your week, because it's about to get hectic.
It's going to be a fun one. All right, take care, guys.
Thanks, Michael. Have a
appreciate
good night.
It.
All right, everybody, we just spoke with the man, Mr. Michael Phillips of Richmond Times. I always enjoy it because it's like he just gels with us.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He's so funny.
Yeah, and the crazy news from today, the Jets actually finally made the move of acquiring for Aaron Rodgers from the Green Bay Packers. And I just wanted to say, I was kind of surprised by what the Packers got back, because all they did was flip the first-round picks. They didn't even get a first-rounder.
Yep.
They have the possibility of getting one in 24.
I know, but still.
No, I know.
Yeah.
Everyone was
that was the big holdup.
2 to 3 first-rounders for Aaron Rodgers.
They swapped first. They got a second this year, a 6th, and then next year they have a second with the ability for it to become a first if he plays over 65% of the snaps or something. It's crazy. It's funny that Aaron Rodgers did that to him, because Aaron Rodgers was straight up like, yeah, I'm only going to the Jets, or I can sit here and you guys can pay me $38 million a year, or you guys can cut me and pay me $68 million right when you cut me. So choice is yours, guys. And they were like, damn it, guess we got to send them for nothing.
I know. Now all the quarterbacks in the NFL are going to be going to that shaman to get trip out for a couple of days to learn that lingo. You know what I'm saying?
Balls, apparently.
Now let's move on to our fan questions before we are joined by our next guest. This question is from the Colonel. Reed. With Chase Young's lingering 5th-year option drama and Shaka Toney's indefinite suspension for gambling, how has that changed our draft prioritization? Sorry.
I've always thought that edge rusher was going to be almost like defensive tackle last year, where there's a chance that they could take one earlier. I think with the Shaka Toney thing, that does make it more of a need. I don't know how big of a role Shaka Toney was going to play, but he did play a good amount last year. He had to. Of course, Chase was coming off the injury, but yeah, with the 5th-year option thing, we don't know what's going on. You gotta plan for the future, and I wouldn't be shocked if they take an edge rusher earlier than most people think.
Yeah, and for me, I do think it does change things a little bit. Like, if before you thought edge rusher was more like a 7th-round pick, I think this bumps it up to like a 5th or a 4th. And that's the kind of thing is, I know Shaka Toney was not a starter on this football team per se, but he was a good, effective pass rusher. He was a productive for us in a sense, and so it takes away that depth. So regardless, we have to refill that spot, right? Because he is going to be gone for a year, and so I do wonder where the edge rusher was on their priorities when they headed into this draft process and where it does go. But I will say I think the depth is more concerning than getting a starter for the position, if that makes sense. Like, I understand that everyone wants to be able to get a replacement in there for Montez Sweat or Chase Young in case of that, but I'm not concerned about that right now because they're on our team, and you could supplant and you could get edge rushers at any point in time. I mean, Von Miller was coming off the streets and stuff, so you can always do that type of thing with edge rushers. So I'm not really concerned. I don't want it to be like a first or a second rounder, but I wouldn't be surprised, man. I really wouldn't at this point.
Yeah, I think it'll be a day 3 pick. I think that it'll be like you said, a rotational guy, or maybe a guy with like a high upside that maybe they can turn into like a second edge rusher, third edge rusher for you down the line. And Shaka Toney played special teams. He had a lot of special team snaps. So
that's a great point.
If anything, they're gonna draft a guy on day 3 and possibly to replace him as far as like the special team snaps go.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And this next question is from Sharp Eye Washington on Twitter. Thank you, brother. Hall, I don't know if you guys have already discussed this, but rumors are swirling that Montez Sweat could be involved in a trade to the Bears. If so, what would be fair compensation?
I think Montez Sweat gets you maybe a second or third, somewhere between a second and third round pick. Yeah, you're not going to get a first for him just because he hasn't had like the huge sack numbers and like the godly like taking over the game, taking over part of the season type of career yet. But obviously he's made plays throughout his career. He can make plays when given the chance. Last year he finally got the sack numbers up. He was very disruptive. He was all over the backfield. So I would say nothing higher than a second, maybe, but most likely probably be like an early third.
Well, the big question is, where does he rank in compared to all the other edge rushers in this class? And I think that he would be a first-round pick here, especially with his experience in the professionals, his length, and his production. He's growing. You know,
you got to also think if you're trading for him, you're probably going to have to pay him as well. So that's why
I understand. But the thing is, the length, the size, and the production increasing year by year, and how young he is, changes things for an NFL team because they're not looking at this as only a 3-year thing. They're looking at him as possibly saying, "Oh, he could be worth a 3 to 5." You know, so the big question is, where do these teams rank Montez Sweat according to the rest of the edge rushers, right? So if they view him as, let's say, a bottom half of the first round compared to the rest of these guys, and you're probably going to be getting, like Hall said, a third or a fourth rounder. But, I mean, if they view Montez Sweat as a difference maker that they could plug in immediately and be good for them like Preston Smith was for the Green Bay Packers, I think a team would be willing to ship a first rounder. I just find that hard to believe because there's other needs that other teams need. And so it's not like they're like, I only need an edge rusher. Give me an edge rusher. I'll give him my first rounder for it. I don't think anyone's in that position, like in panic mode, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys basically hit on all the points. I would say that a day 2 pick somewhere on there. And yeah, but it depends. I mean, do they want to pay him? That's probably the biggest thing.
Yep, you're right. Now this next question is from Scoot on Twitter. Read.
Yeah.
If we draft an A+/B+ class, but the season starts and we're not winning, how long does new owners give Ron to get crap right?
That is a good question. I would imagine that they're going to want to start from scratch, almost regardless, unless Rivera does something incredible with the team. So I don't think his leash is going to be terribly long. But then now the question is, like, do they actually, since he basically knows he's going to be gone anyway, do they want to just let it ride and let them, keep losing so they can get that Caleb Williams is being reported? Or, I mean, do they want to inject some fire into this team, fire the coach, and bring somebody else in that can kind of get them going during the season? I don't think his leash will be terribly long, but I would also not be shocked if they just let him ride out the season regardless.
Yeah, at that end point was exactly what I was going to say. I think they're just going to let him ride out the season. And if that, I think Ron would walk away on his own. I think that he wants to be able to have that honor, that respect of being able to walk away before being forced out. Firing Ron mid-season is like a Dan Snyder sort of thing to do, showing that disrespect of what Ron has done here in Built. And I don't think the new ownership is interested in ruffling the feathers with the current players and the person they look up to in that sort of sense. So if anything, I think it'd be much more of an agreement of saying, let the young man do his thing. You take a step back, and after the season, why don't we take separate ways, kind of thing. I don't think that it would happen during the season. I don't think they'd fire him. I think they give him more respect than that. Scoot.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go based off of what do we know about Josh Harris and his ownership coming from the 76ers. He's the one that started the whole trust the process, pretty much just tank your team and try to get the best pick possible in the draft. Obviously, that works better in the NBA because it's more star driven in the NBA. But to kind of cross it over to the NFL and with the team, I think that if they were started off bad and it was like one of the like a losing season, a lost season, if you want to call it that, I think he would just let Ron ride it out because he comes from that trust the process, kind of like tear it down to build it back up type of thing. And so I think that he would just let them keep losing, let it play out, and let them see wherever they fall as far as like a top 5, top 10 draft pick if it got to that, and then try to maneuver up and work his way from there. So, I think that, like I said, I think he would let it ride it out and try to bring that, try to trust the process kind of a mentality to the NFL if it was like a losing season.
Yep. Now let's move on to his next question from Tony Franchise on Twitter. Thank you, Tone. Reed, what would be the most outlandish or head-scratching pick we could make come draft night?
Taking like Zay Flowers or something, taking a wide receiver in there and just being like, why are you doing this, guys? Well, what's going on? But I mean, from like a realistic point of view, probably the tight end. And look, I like the tight ends at the top of this class. I think this is one of the best tight end classes in a long time. It's just, I think you can get somebody good on day 2, early day 3. Yeah, I don't think that you need to waste a first-round pick on somebody like that, especially when it's not as big of a need as some other positions that we have.
Yeah, even though I love him, I think a quarterback like Hendon Hooker, if he was drafted at 16, would be a huge head-scratcher just because it would create so many problems. Like, where does he match up with Jacoby Brissett once healthy? So I think it would be Hendon Hooker for me.
I'd probably say if they drafted like a safety or like you said, Hendon Hooker or QB or
defensive tackle.
Say like a guy like Will Levis or pretty much anywhere we're already like set at, like you said, wide receiver, D tackle. I would say edge, but we're not really set at edge anymore. But even if they took an edge rusher in the first round, honestly, I think I would kind of be like head scratching, like, why did y'all do that?
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. It's a good one. The other one was tight end, but when I was like debating in my head, I was like, well, you can't really say tight end because then Eric Bieniemy is like getting his guy, and I get it, and I understand if they went that way, but at the same time, like, dude, like, there's better options there, But
right.
Look, I'm not in the war room, dude.
Frustrating, yeah.
I'm not in the war room. It is what it is.
I would end up loving it the next day or within 20 minutes. I'd be like, dude, this guy's going to be an all-pro, man. This guy's going to talk myself into it.
Now, let's go to our next question. This is sent in the Discord chat server from Orange Crush 92. Hall, does your best draft scenario involve trading back? Is Washington's infatuation with trading back now an overwhelming effect of us trading up with such poor results in the past? Are we pushing trading back so hard because we desperately don't want management trading up for any reason? And is trading up a doomsday or a worst case scenario for us at this point?
I would say that trading up probably would be the worst case scenario because that means they're probably trading up to get like a quarterback or something like that, which would make you be a head scratcher because you'd be like, why were you propping up Sam Howell the whole offseason just to trade up to get a quarterback? And then trading up to get unless you're going to get unless you think you have your legit left tackle for the next 10, 15 years or next Trent Williams or something like that, I could see them trading up. It wouldn't be the worst case scenario, but I just think that Martin Mayhew, he just comes from the trading back kind of like acquiring more picks. I think he even said during when he was having his press conference that the more picks you get, the more chance you have, like the higher the hit rate percentage, I guess, if you want to call it that. So pretty much the more players you pick, the more chance you have of finding a gem, like a Cam Curl at the 7th round or a Derek Forrest in the 5th round, something like that. So, and obviously it worked out pretty good last year. If Sam Howell becomes a legit starter for us, and if Cole Turner can come in and contribute this year and not be injured, then trading back, obviously last year worked out as well. You got Dotson in the trade back as well. So overall, I just think that their philosophy is not to be just overly aggressive, I think. So, and I think that like I said, they just come from the philosophy of draft as many players as possible because you have a higher chance of hitting and finding one of those players in the draft if you can with the more players that you pick?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that my dream scenario is straight up that I want to trade back. I would be very excited about that in order to gain an extra second rounder, first rounder for next season in order to trade up for Caleb Williams like it's been talked about so much, right? I would absolutely love that scenario. But I'm not going to say it's my dream scenario because I truly feel like you could get a really good player at 16, but most likely it will not happen, like a Christian Gonzalez, so to speak. But I would love to be able to trade back, get that first rounder for next year for Caleb Williams, and or a quarterback to trade up for one, and then taking a guy like DeJuan Jones, Anton Harrison, or Darnell Wright, if possible, in that back end of the first round. But it's probably not possible. But I will say it's a dream scenario, Reed. I know you're sitting there shaking your head.
I just hear it so much.
With trading up, I don't think trading up is like necessarily a bad thing. I just think that it's really hard to make trading up justified. Like I think the Falcons did a good job of this when they drafted Julio Jones, right? They traded up for him. Like it's hard to get that production back, right? And that's why I'm just so hesitant of it, just because of how crazy and how much of a limb you're going out on for those guys. Now we are joined by our next guest, Mr. Mitch Tischler, big man himself. How are you doing this evening, brother?
Gentlemen, I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Cannot
complain.
Pretty good.
Only a couple days away, Mitch. We're almost there. We're almost there until the lull, until, training camp starts heating up and everything. But, everyone that knows you on a personal level knows that you love the big men. You're just like Reed. You love the big guys that are in this draft. And I want to get your opinion at pick 16. Do you want to go big man on the offensive line, or are you kind of swaying a little bit?
No, I want them in the first round to go O-line. At 16, it's going to depend on kind of how things fall in front of them. I think there's pretty much a consensus big three. You can have Peter Skoronski, Paris Johnson, and then Broderick Jones. If one of those three happens to take a tumble in the draft and sitting there at 16, they better run, not walk to the podium, run to the podium and take that guy. I think you can look at, kind of the Commanders' history on the O-line. And, I think Commanders fans got a little spoiled because you had so many years of Chris Samuels and then Trent Williams over there at left tackle. And those guys were just there. They're plug and play. You didn't think about them. You didn't ever have to give them help. They were on an island on the left side, and they did an incredible job. And for basically 20 years, that's been what Commanders fans have had to look at over there. And I think you can look at what happened last year and honestly even 2 years ago and recognize the need for an upgrade there on the O-line. Now, obviously, it's not a guarantee that they go that way, but for me at 16, if one of those three guys is there, I'm taking them. And if not, I'm obviously looking to move back. But two other guys I think belong in the first round, and that's Darnell Wright, kid from Tennessee. He's a guy who fits Ron Rivera's world perfectly, played both on the right and the left side. So the great word of positional flex, Ron can throw that around for a little while and talk about him. And then Anton Harrison from Oklahoma, both real big guys who have a ton of experience and would fit right in. So I think those five guys are the five guys I'm looking at in the first round on the O-line. And then if they end up waiting until the second round at 41 to 47 to figure out what they're going to do, there's a couple names that you can banner around, but nobody's going to be plug and play like those first round guys.
Right. And so that kind of brings me to what prospect would you stand on a table for and be like, this is the guy, this is who we're taking? If say all those offensive linemen are available, who are you taking?
Paris Johnson. I think Paris Johnson might go with number 3 overall. I think that he's the guy who's criminally underrated. I think by fans and analysts a little bit. I think folks around the NFL love him. I'd be shocked if he makes it outside of the top 10. I think he's a day one plug and play stud superstar, 6'6", 330, whatever he is. I think he's a guy that you can set it and forget it.
He does that sick jump turn too that he did at his pro day. You see that?
There you go.
An awesome 180. Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned the O-lineman would be like your best case scenario, more than likely. What would be your worst case scenario at 16 or at whatever, say they trade up or trade back? What would be your worst case scenario on Thursday night?
You ready for this? I'm sure there's a number of fans that are going to hate this. I feel like there's somebody sitting in this Zoom that might hate it. If they take Bijan Robinson at 16, it is a vital mistake, a massive mistake. not that I don't think Bijan Robinson is going to be a good NFL player, but you look at the kind of return on investment that you're going to get from a running back. And to me, the running back position in the NFL has been devalued so far down the list that I don't think it makes sense to take a running back in the first round. And I know that the kid is a stud and there's a lot to him that you can like, but for the most part, running plays are negative plays in the NFL. And if you can't throw the ball and if you can't protect your quarterback, especially if you're starting a young kid who's in the 5th round, if you can't protect him, then it doesn't matter how good your running game is because you're not going to be able to move the ball on offense. And so I know that some folks nationally are getting excited about Bijan Robinson to the Commanders. I think, again, I think there's a misconception from some of the national media about kind of how Ron Rivera and how this coaching staff looks at this offense and where they're at. And I think a Bijan Robinson move would be a tough one.
Absolutely. What a slap in the face to Brian Robinson too. I feel like after that year that he had last year, he's getting all this excitement from Commanders fans, and then we're like, hey, by the way, carries are cut in half, bud.
Right. At best.
Yeah, right.
Now, my next question for you, Mitch, you talked about the tackles there at 16. Do you think that they should stop there at offensive line help at 16? Let's say, looking at the 3rd round, 2nd round on, are there any interior O-line guys in those later rounds that you're looking at that you really are excited for?
Getting excited for? I think it's tough to say that there's any of those guys that I'm going to stand on a table and start, pounding my fist down that they got to go there. They certainly need to add help. I mean, they've only drafted one O-lineman since Brandon Sheriff in the first 2 rounds. We're talking about 7 years now, and I think they need to. That's obviously the biggest place that they need to improve their depth and get better at. The kid from Minnesota,
John Michael Schmitz.
John Michael Schmitz is a dude who, if he's sitting there at 47, might be an interesting pick. I don't think they're going to go O-line 1st and 2nd round. I think, obviously there's a need at corner. I think you might look at tight end there. It might be maybe not corner, it might be the safety corner kind of hybrid thing that they like to use on defense there. But I mean, there's a couple guys who I think can step in and play. There's the super senior from Eastern Michigan whose name is is his last name. He's a guy who might be Sidey So. He's a guy in 4th or 5th, 5th round. Might be an interesting kind of day 3 pick. I like what I've seen from him, and I like kind of bringing in some of these interior O-linemen that have a ton of experience in college. I think that's something that translates well. Those guys who are 3-year starters, and now that we have these COVID years of 3, 4, even 5-year starters on the inside. So there's a couple guys out there. The USC kid, Andrew Voorhees, another one who I think might be interesting. But, once you get out of that kind of 1st and 2nd round, it's really tough to, whether we're talking about wide receiver, O-lineman, linebacker, it's tough to really, want to stand on a table for a guy when you start getting to the, day 3 picks.
Right. And a lot of Commanders fans I see all over the place feel that linebacker is a big need. I see a lot of people saying that if we're not taking O-line or corner, we got to go linebacker in round 1. First of all, how big do you think this fan base would implode if they took a linebacker in round 1? And what is the earliest you would take a linebacker?
I mean, day 3 is the earliest I'm taking a linebacker. Right. I think between Jamin Davis being the 1st round pick 2 years ago, and then the signings that they made in the interior of the defensive line, you need John Allen and Deron Payne to make whoever is sitting back there at linebacker be a superstar, be very good. And you can't, I don't think you can afford to go first defense in the 1st round this year. Not that it's all been this group's work, but they haven't gone offense in the 1st round in forever. And it's something that they got to, I mean, besides Jahan Dotson last year, obviously, but I think it's something I think they got to keep building. I think they, you bring in Eric Bieniemy and he's kind of the shiny new fun piece. I think you got to let him, pick his guy that he wants to add to this offense. So linebacker is a need sort of, but based on what they've done along the defensive line, I don't think they can afford to invest heavily at linebacker.
Right.
Yeah, jumping back to the offensive line and the interior to be specific, have you heard anything or any rumblings about Chase Roullier? Any updates on him, or is he still a possible post-June 1 cut candidate?
He's certainly still a candidate, whether he's healthy or not. They were conspicuously quiet about him, this past week when the players were back at camp. I did see that he was overseas in Italy and took a vacation with his wife and family, I guess maybe about a month ago or so, and he was up and walking around. I think that's one of the biggest questions. Once you get past May 2nd and figure out what they're doing with Chase Young and that 5th-year option, I think that's one of the biggest questions you have. Because if Chase Roullier is healthy and comes back, all of a sudden you have a pretty fair amount of depth there at both center and then at guard too. So I think that changes the offensive line a lot. And I know that he's owed a lot of money and he's been injured the past 2 years. That's a guy I would stand on the table for, that I want him starting for me week 1, particularly with a young quarterback, taking those first team snaps. I want a kind of veteran center, and Chase Roullier has done a really good job, since he got here in DC, and he does a really good job of calling out, line calls and adjusting for blitzes, and I think that's a super important thing. And as much as you can be excited about some of the other guys, they just don't have, they don't have that experience, and they don't have that time in the offense that he does. So I'm hoping that he's back. Best case scenario is he takes a restructure. I don't know whether that is something that's on the table that he would take, but I would be willing to suck it up and pay him his money this year and figure out what's going on there.
Yeah, when healthy, one of the most underrated centers in the NFL, hands down. He's so good when he's healthy.
Yeah, he is. Now, to wrap this up, Mitch, I only have a couple more questions for you, sir. But let's just say best case scenario in your mind, the first 3 rounds, what 3 positions would they be drafting in the first, second, third round that you'd walk away ecstatic about?
Obviously, offensive tackle. I go tackle, corner, tight end.
Tackle, corner, tight end. Tight end's that high on your list, huh? Now, next one.
I'd like to get another playmaker in there. I think that I like what John Bates does. Logan Thomas, unfortunately, I think could be a post June 1 cut candidate. And then, you have a couple of young guys who were, 5th round picks and undrafted, and Cole Turner and Armani Rogers. I'd like to get somebody a little more established there. I don't know that that's necessarily going to happen, but I'd like to see kind of 2 upgrades on offense and 1 upgrade on defense.
Brian Davis just bought the Commanders. Thoughts?
Next question for you. Obviously last season, last year, the Commanders drafted Jahan Dotson. They traded back for him. Everyone was kind of complaining, said this is a 2nd-round pick that you drafted. Ended up being one of the most productive wide receivers from this draft class and kind of solidify himself as a 1st-round pick. So, Mitch, who is somebody that is considered a 2nd-round pick right now that the Commanders could draft that could possibly be, you think, productive?
Well, I think you look at offensive tackle. I think at 16, while it might be a little bit early to take either Darnell Wright or Anton Harrison, when Ron Rivera and Martin Mayhew kind of lock eyes on their guy, they're not worried about, what the perception is in the league. And, they did it with Jamin Davis, and then they did it with Jahan Dotson. So you kind of have 1 up and 1 down, at least as far as, Jamin's first couple of years have been concerned. Obviously he could turn into, a stud and, you can be excited about it. So I think they're going to try and trade back at 16, because I don't expect any of the big 3 tackles to be there. And I think that they're going to try and trade back. If they can't, they might just sit there and say, hey, Anton Harrison or Darnell Wright's my guy. The only other O-lineman I think they'll go in the 1st round is Osiris Torrance, but I think that would be a real stretch at 16.
Right.
But if they move back into the mid-20s or low to mid-20s, maybe he's a guy that they could snag there. But I think they're going to end up sitting there at 16 and taking somebody that folks are a little disappointed with.
Good. I'm happy to hear it. Last one I have for you. You talked about not wanting to draft Bijan Robinson as the worst case scenario. Well, then, Mitch, do you think Washington should draft a running back? And if they do you think early, mid, or late rounds?
Let me rephrase that. Worst case scenario would be if Will Levis drops to 16 and the Commanders want to take him there. That dude has BUST written all over him. The love for Will Levis is blowing my mind. I think that guy is a certified bust. Should they go running back? Yes, they should definitely bring in. Another running back. But I think you have. I don't think there's any running back that is good enough to supersede best player available. And so at best, I think you're looking at round 3 for a running back, or I'm sorry, day three for a running back.
And you guys heard it here. Mitch Tischler, pick 16, Will Levis. Let's get it, baby. Woo! Mitch, I can't thank you enough for joining us, brother. I hope you had a good weekend. I hope you enjoy your week. Draft is on Thursday. It's probably going to go slow, but I hope you have a good one, brother, and enjoy this beautiful day. I always appreciate your time you spent with us.
Oh, draft day is one of the best days of the year. It's a ton of fun. Thanks for having me, guys. This week's going to be there's going to be a lot of talk about a lot of different players to a lot of different places. Hendon Hooker, best quarterback out of this draft.
I agree with you.
Really?
Very, very
wow.
good, Mitch. All right, Mitch. Have a good night, brother. I appreciate you.
Later, guys.
Thanks, brother.
Appreciate it.
All right, everybody. We just spoke with the man, Mr. Mitch Tischler.
Kyle, you just agreed because you love hookers.
Shut up, dude.
Wouldn't that be tight though to have a quarterback with that last name?
Hooker.
No,
Yeah,
but
that's just like,
Hall and I answered Orange Crush's question. So, Reed, if you want me to read it back, do you think that the best case scenario for Washington in the draft is trading back? And is Washington's infatuation with trading back now an overwhelming effect of us trading up with such poor results in the past?
No, like you guys kind of talked about, I do think that trading back, that's just kind of Mayhew's mindset, and I like that. I like the trading back, gain some more assets, and then because more players you take, the more chances you have of hitting on some of these guys. And I don't think a lot of people put a lot of like thought into the history of like, well, we used to do this, it didn't work out, we did this, it didn't really work out. When it comes to draft, I don't really feel like, I mean, they traded up for RG3. It worked out for a season, then it didn't work out. I don't think that that's like going to scare him. Same with like the Ron not taking a cornerback in round 1. People are like, well, historically, he didn't do it. It's like, that's just the way that the board's shaped out, though. I don't think that Ron is like, if you take a corner in round 1, you're a fucking idiot. Like, I don't think that's really. But so no, I do think that trading back would be awesome, and I don't think I just don't think that they want to trade up this year. I think that they're confident with the way that the roster is shaped up.
Yeah, no, see, just to elaborate, I don't think that people are eager to trade back and always say that they want to trade back because they are concerned about mismanagement of that draft prospect, wherever have you. I think what's happening is they fall in love with prospects and they do these mock drafts, and when it comes up to the pick 16, there's not really much names there that they can correlate with, right? And so they immediately think in their mind, I want to trade back to a better sweet spot so I can pick somebody that I think fits there. That Jahan Dotson kind of aspect, right? That second round grade they have on a player, but you really like them kind of thing. And that's why I don't really, my dream scenario isn't trading back, because if there's only 15 first round grades on players here, do you really want to trade back from 16, or do you want the best pick possible of that next batch? Right? Does it really give you a lot more if you're trading back to get extra picks in this draft if that second round is really starting at pick 16? You know what I mean? So I'd much rather go and get the best draft prospect possible based on that scenario rather than trading back, in my personal opinion. This is a really good question, OC. I appreciate it. Now the next one is from Tim Towner on our Discord chat server. Hall, what is our greatest position of need in the 2023 draft?
I would say lineman. I just think that if we want to be able to evaluate Sam Howell, like Mitch said, we want to be able to evaluate Sam Howell and what he can do, what he's able to produce or not produce, then you're going to have to put the best players on offense around him possible. And with the line being so poor last year and being a lot of the outside of like quarterback and play calling, I think line was like obviously a big problem last year as well. So definitely fortify the line. Give Sam Howell the best chance to sit in the pocket and get the ball out and distribute it out to the wide receivers. So I would say that the biggest need right now is O-line.
For me, I think the biggest need for Washington is a change of identity, specifically on the offensive line. I don't think they just need to go get a tackle just to go get one. Like, for instance, everyone is talking up Paris Johnson. I love Mitch Tischler. I respect his opinion, but I have DeJuan Jones over Paris Johnson. I have Anton Harrison over Paris Johnson. And Darnell Wright over them. The reason why I have them over Paris Johnson is because Paris Johnson isn't finishing his blocks. He's not physical, throwing guys into the ground and trying to bring violence onto them. He's much more of the cloud type, like a Charles Leno. And I do not want that. I want a change of identity. I want some dogs up front. I want Jonathan Allen's tenacity up front. And a guy like DeJuan Jones, who's 6'8", 365 pounds, is going to do everything in his power to get you horizontal to the ground and throwing you into the earth. That's what Washington needs on the offensive line. I think that's our biggest need that we need. And I know that I've gone on a rambling here, and you could talk about position, but I think it's a change of identity offensively. Like, I want to be able to develop that thing where we're coming at you, we're running at you, like kind of like Reed on the weekends, and you're not going to be able to stop it. And that's what I want to establish here. And right now we don't exactly have that, but one draft pick like this could definitely help you in that sense.
Yeah, it's like Ben Roethlisberger in a bathroom stall. You can't stop it. You just got to kind of let it happen. You know?
It's so bad. Don't say that. Now, this next question from Tim Towner. Which is tougher, waiting for Christmas or waiting to find out the gender of your unborn child or waiting for the first night of the NFL draft?
Waiting for the first night of the NFL draft, hands down. When I was a kid, I would have said Christmas. You know, but first of all, James is 2 now. We still don't know his gender, okay? So you guys buck down, okay? We let him decide in this household. We're very progressive over here. Waiting for the draft, man, because it's just months and months and months of build up, and like you have the scouting combine in February, and it's like it just come on, all right, let's get this going. It's just the best 3 days of the year, you know, and that starts on Thursday. So waiting for the draft is excruciating. This year, I will say, did go by faster than last year. It is a lot like Christmas in that sense.
No, I'm being 100% serious here. This isn't a bit. The finding out the gender of your unborn child, because literally every person, whenever you tell them that you're pregnant, they'll ask you, do you know the sex is a boy or girl? And you're like, no, dude, I don't know yet. I have to wait a couple more months. And so it's like one of those things where
wait
like,
to pop those balloons.
Right, can you just tell me so I can let everyone know whenever they ask me the question? But with the draft, it's like with the draft, I don't want to say the draft takes forever because I have so much fun doing like film breakdowns for the draft that it doesn't feel long. What does feel long is the dumb arguments you get into about draft prospects. And that's probably the worst thing about it. But besides that, I think it's the waiting for the gender of your unborn child.
I'm going to say none of those, and I'm going to go with choice D, which is
hitting a parlay.
The time, yeah, that too. The time that from like the end of like June, whenever they like finish up with like OTAs or whatever, up until the first week of training camp in like August, is by far the longest.
Because you got nothing.
And the worst
time
of the year.
You got
it feels like it every week. Feels like it just drags and goes. Then you're looking at the calendar like, all right, well, we got 20 more weeks till the season starts. Then you're looking at it again, and it's like, man, it's probably been like a whole month away. Like the season's a couple months away, and you're like, damn, it's only been one day. I still got 20 weeks till the season starts. So just that lull between January or June, July, up until August, that month and a half, horrible.
Yeah, because at least during the draft, like you talked about, Kyle, you can scout players, you can watch tape, you can do mock drafts. During that, you're just like, all right, come on, let's get this going. Let's pick this up. Let's see who's going to get injured the first week of training camp. Come on.
I know it's going to be absolutely.
And we're going to be on Hard Knocks, so it's going to be even like such a like even like longer wait.
I don't know. I think
with all the buildup,
the Jets might take that, dude.
Well, I don't know.
I would love Hard Knocks here. I absolutely would. I just think that Aaron Rodgers going to New York.
I only wanted to do Hard Knocks if we have Brian Davis by our team. You know how funny that would be.
I got my cameras from white people.
Yeah, he'd be like, yeah, I'm selling all this shit. You guys want anything from the locker room? Come here, I'll sell you this for $50. I'll sell you these knee pads right here for $20. I got this from Elon Musk. So you want this for $100? Like,
there's an Elon Musk tissue. Right. Absolutely. This was a good episode, boys. That's going to wrap us up for this one. We got a lot of good info out of this. It's going to be a long week. The draft is on Thursday. We absolutely cannot freaking wait, man.
A long week.
It is. I really wish that we were recording at draft night, but it's unfortunate. It is what it is, but maybe next year, man. Maybe next year we'll be able to do that again.
I'm happy we're not.
Shut up. All right, everybody. We'll see you again on Thursday. Have a good night. If you'd like to join us on Thursday for when we record for the NFL draft, we're probably going to be going live streaming on draft night when it comes around the Commanders pick. And so we're going to
around pick 10 or so.
Yeah, so we'll be able to talk about each pick that's happened and what could come down for the Commanders. Then we're going to react to the pick as well.
In the rare case that they do trade up, say with Arizona to 3, we're going to have to drop everything we're doing and get on Zoom to record it, okay?
Okay, dude. All right, everybody. Okay. I'm Kyle.
I had something funny to say, but I can't remember it now. I'm Hall.
God damn it, Hall.
Hate when that happens.
Hall too.
All right, everybody. We'll see.
I was reading something and it just out of my mind.
We'll see you on Thursday, everybody. Washington football. Woo! Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Kyle. I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching. And if you liked what you saw, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you get notified when anything new is uploaded to the channel. Also, we just launched the BurgundyZone.com. You can go there and find all of our latest news, articles, and the latest episodes that are uploaded. Again, we also have the Discord chat server, where all of our VIP folks are in, like Andy Burrows, Scott Hartley, Sergio Martin is in there as well. Don't miss out on the Discord chat server. Go and check that out. Until next time, everybody, Washington football. Woo!